Kaseya provides a universal decryptor, but for a price. NSO Group finds its Pegasus spyware in the spotlight, and more on this week's episode of Bear Security. Welcome to Bear Security, a weekly quick take on topics affecting our businesses, clients, careers, and communities in cybersecurity. I'm Chris Cly, and here are the stories for the week of July 26, 2021. Our top story this week continues our coverage of IT software vendor Kaseya. ARS Technica reported on Thursday that IT software firm Kaseya, who was at the center of the largest coordinated ransomware attack to date, has obtained a universal decryptor to restore the data of companies affected. Kaseya claims that the decryptor came from a trusted third party, but how they obtained it and whether they paid for it remains uncertain. The development comes as a relief to organizations who have been unable to resume full operations or restore their data, especially after the ransomware group responsible, REvil, went offline. To make these already turbulent matters worse, CNN is reporting that Kaseya is requiring that businesses sign a non-disclosure agreement in order to obtain the decryptor, making it possibly harder for researchers and even the government to piece together what happened. While NDAs are not uncommon in these types of situations, we do have to wonder what exactly Kaseya is looking to hide at this point. Thus far, Kaseya has declined to comment on the agreements to CNN. You can read the full story on both ARS Technica and CNN via the links in the description. Wired reported on Thursday regarding research published by an international group of researchers and journalists from more than 14 different organizations regarding the behavior of Israeli spyware vendor NSO Group. They say the NSO Group's spyware, Pegasus, was being used on activists, journalists, executives, and politicians by multiple governments including India, Mexico, and the United Arab Emirates, based on a leaked list of more than 50,000 phone numbers they obtained and analyzed. In addition to this research, they published a tool called the Mobile Verification Toolkit, which can check your Android or iOS device for any indicators that it was bugged by the Pegasus spyware. Amazon recently shut down cloud infrastructure linked to the NSO Group last Monday after these reports began to surface about the use of the Pegasus spyware. NSO Group has called the research false allegations by a consortium of media outlets and said it would no longer respond to media inquiries. You can read more about the International Consortium's findings or check out the Mobile Verification Toolkit via the links in the description. ThreatPost is reporting that a privilege escalation vulnerability affecting versions of Windows 10 and the pre-build versions of Windows 11 has been given a workaround fix by Microsoft. The vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2021-36934, exists due to an unusual set of permissions on multiple system files, including the SAM database, which would allow an attacker access to hash credentials. These hashes could then be decrypted offline and used to gain access using more permissive accounts overall. Systems running Windows 10 as far back as build 1809 have been found to be vulnerable, but not every system is showing to be vulnerable unless the shadow volumes are enabled or the Windows System Protection feature is enabled. To resolve the vulnerability, Microsoft is recommending administrators reset the permissions on the target folder, along with clearing all the prior shadow copies. A link to the ThreatPost story, including details on how to resolve it, are in the description. The Register is reporting that Fortinet has patched flaws in their FortiManager and FortiAnalyzer products to address a remote code execution vulnerability. The vulnerability affects the FGFMSD daemon and can be exploited by sending a specially crafted packet to the target device's FGFM port, which provides a remote attacker the ability to execute unauthorized code as root. The FGFM service is disabled by default in the FortiAnalyzer and can only be enabled on certain models. Fortinet recommends customers upgrade to the most recently released version in the 5x, 6x, or 7x branches to close the hole. If that is not possible, the workaround is to disable the FortiManager features on the FortiAnalyzer units manually. You can read the full story along with the workaround code via the Register. Last for today's episode, Dark Reading is reporting that Qualys has identified 2 vulnerabilities in the Linux kernel. The vulnerabilities relate to how the Linux kernel handles the conversion of specific data types that can then be used to gain root-level access. This is triggered by either mounting a file system on a very long path, which can then crash the system, or creating, mounting, and deleting a deep directory structure whose total path exceeds 1 GB. So far, Red Hat, Ubuntu, Debian, and SUSE have confirmed the vulnerability and released patches. A POC has also been published, but an attacker must have authenticated user access to be able to attempt the exploitation. You can get links to both the Dark Reading article and the Qualys research in the description. That is all for this week's episode of Bear Security. Be sure to check in every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern via our blog, on YouTube, or via podcast for the latest to prepare you for the week. Links to all the stories mentioned can be found in the description or on our website, syntaxbearer.io. On there, you can also find links to interesting stories, tools, research, and videos we just couldn't cover on this week's episode. Thanks as always for tuning in. This is Chris Clay signing off. Stay safe out there, friends.